In the world of blockbuster cinema, the Marvel Cinematic Universe stands as an unprecedented experiment. It is a sprawling, interconnected web of superheroes and storylines that has redefined franchise filmmaking. But with great power comes great predictability? As the MCU has grown, so too has a sense of familiarity. The same story beats, the same character arcs, the same visual style. It's all starting to feel a bit, well, formulaic. And the rest of Hollywood, in an attempt to replicate Marvel's success, has followed suit, leading to a landscape of cinema that is becoming increasingly stale. But amidst the sea of sameness, there is a beacon of hope: Christopher Nolan. His films, from Inception to The Dark Knight, are as diverse as they are complex, each one a unique cinematic experience. Sure, there are ups and downs in his career. I mean, have you tried to understand Tenet without subtitles?
The vault is based on the pendulum, each vault a separate structure within the others. Damage to one structure won't compromise.
But Nolan has managed to circumvent traditional Hollywood and create pieces of visual art that we continue to show up for and remember. So, if Hollywood is to change, the MCU must lead the way. And what better way to do that than to learn from one of the most innovative filmmakers of our time? Today, we're diving into what Marvel can learn from Christopher Nolan. Let's start with a comparison that might seem a bit strange, no pun intended. Inception and Doctor Strange are two films that delve into alternate realities, but they do so in very different ways. In Inception, Christopher Nolan presents us with a world where dreams can be manipulated and reality is subjective. The film is a complex labyrinth of ideas, with multiple layers of reality and a plot that keeps you guessing until the very end. And on the other hand, Doctor Strange introduces us to the concept of alternate dimensions and the mystic arts, but it does so in a more straightforward way. The film is certainly entertaining, and it does a great job of visualizing these alternate realities, but it doesn't delve into these concepts with the same depth or complexity as Inception. For instance, consider the scene where Cobb explains to Adrian the mechanics of dreams within dreams. The film doesn't just tell us about this concept, it shows us. We even see the van falling in slow motion in the first layer, the hotel hallway spinning in the second, the snowy fortress in the third. It's a masterclass in visual storytelling. It demands your attention and challenges you to keep up with its intricate narrative. And now let us compare that to a scene in Doctor Strange. Take for example the scene where the Ancient One first shows Strange the multiverse. It's a visually stunning experience, but it doesn't challenge the viewer in the same way. The film explains the concept of the multiverse, but it doesn't explore it in any meaningful depth. So what can Marvel learn from this? Well, for starters, they could embrace complexity and depth in their storytelling. They could explore these themes of alternate realities in a more nuanced way, challenging their audiences to think and engage with the material on a deeper level. After all, who says a superhero film can't be a film that challenges one's mind? I mean, we're literally in the phase of Marvel where they're introducing and incorporating the multiverse at every turn, but we see the most straightforward narratives possible. And what's worse is that they have actually dipped their toes in complexity multiple times, but they're too timid to jump all the way in. Just do it, you cowards! Do it! Doctor Strange did play with the concept of time, and WandaVision is a show that does dive into the complexity of one's psyche creating one's reality, but the audience is not left to think of anything for themselves. It's almost as if Disney just doesn't really trust its audience enough to be challenged in a film. Rather, they just want to make the same old, shiny, package it with a different superhero logo and a different remixed old school song in the trailer. And before you say that audiences won't respond to more complex storytelling, remember this. Inception was not only a critical success, but it also grossed over $800 million worldwide. Clearly, there is an appetite for films that dare to be different, that dare to challenge their audience, and in more recent years, we've had releases like Everything Everywhere All at Once, a movie literally so surrealist and cerebral that it has scenes with rock people and hot dog hands. It literally won Academy Awards, Oscars, hot dog hands. Modern cinematic audiences are ready for complex storytelling, and that's a lesson that Marvel would do well to learn. Moving on, let's take a look at Interstellar and Thor: The Dark World. Both films deal with cosmic entities and otherworldly phenomena, but they approach these themes in very different ways. In Interstellar, Nolan takes us on a journey through space and time, exploring complex scientific concepts like black holes, wormholes, and time dilation. The film doesn't shy away from these topics, it embraces them, using them as integral parts of the story. For instance, consider the scene on Miller's planet. This scene isn't just a cool sci-fi concept, it's a crucial plot point that has real, tangible consequences for the characters, and it was set up with actual science.
Planet is much closer to Gargantua than we thought. Landing there takes us dangerously close, and a black hole that big has a huge gravitational pull.
Gravity on that planet will slow our clock compared to Earth's drastically.
every hour we spend on that planet will be 7 years back on Earth.
So let's take that and contrast it with Thor: The Dark World. The film also deals with otherworldly phenomena, the convergence, the aether, the nine realms, but it doesn't delve into these topics with the same level of detail or complexity.
The police were called to the scene shortly after 11 a.m. this morning after a seemingly harmless rambler approached the area.
The convergence, for example, is a celestial event that aligns the nine realms, but the film glosses over this with flashy VFX and technobabble rather than even attempting to write or explain the event in a way that would promote challenging the audience's understanding of the universe. And I know that's a lot to ask, but I'm just really sick of seeing the same movie over and over. Okay, the key takeaway here is that Marvel could stand to incorporate more intellectual engagement in their films. They have a universe full of cosmic entities and otherworldly phenomena. Why not delve into these concepts in a more detailed and nuanced way? Why not challenge their audience to think, to engage with these ideas on a deeper level? But intellectual engagement is just one part of the equation. Emotional resonance is equally important. Take The Dark Knight, for example. The film presents Batman with a moral dilemma: save Rachel or save Harvey Dent, and it explores the psychological implications of this choice. It's a moment that resonates with the audience, that makes us feel for the character. And then let's compare this with Iron Man 3. The film also presents Tony Stark with personal struggles, his PTSD following the Battle of New York, his relationship with Pepper, but it doesn't delve into these issues with the same depth or nuance. Tony's PTSD, for example, is a serious issue that could have been explored in more depth, but the film only scratches the surface of this complex topic. And I'm not trying to say that Marvel has never had emotional resonance. I was sitting in the audience feeling conflicting feelings for our main characters in Captain America: Civil War. When Tony finds out that his parents were murdered by someone that his friend is actively trying to protect, and the consequences that result in the plot for years to come, well, it's something that Marvel can do, that's all I'm saying. But in a world where we have more Ant-Man Quantumanias than we do Endgames, suffice it to say Marvel is starting to become emotionally shallow. So, what can Marvel do? They can deepen the emotional connections with their characters. They could explore their personal struggles and moral dilemmas in a more nuanced way, making us feel for these characters on a deeper level. Because after all, superheroes are only as interesting as the challenges they face, both physical and emotional. Every time Marvel has hit the mark with emotional resonance, audiences have skyrocketed the film to the top of the Marvel movie list. And I just think it goes to show that we, humans, connect with, well, humans. So let us see our heroes feel human too. Now, let me pose a question to you. What is the one element that can elevate a superhero story from forgettable popcorn flick to a cinematic masterpiece? Well, the answer is a couple things, but the one I want to talk about is the villains. Yes, the villains, the antagonists, the bad guys, the ones we are supposed to root against. They're the secret ingredient that can transform a good story into a great one. Why is that? Well, it's because villains challenge our heroes in ways that force them to grow, to change, to confront their deepest fears and their insecurities. They're the mirror that reflects our heroes' flaws and weaknesses, and in doing so, they make our heroes more human, more relatable. They push the story forward, they create conflict, they raise the stakes. What don't they do? I mean, without a compelling villain, a superhero story can feel flat, predictable, and unengaging. They are the characters that we love to hate. Christopher Nolan understands this better than most. In his Dark Knight trilogy, Nolan gave us a couple of the most memorable villains in recent cinema history: the Joker and Bane. These characters are not just evil for the sake of being evil. They are complex, they are nuanced, and they have missions, okay? They have motivations that, while twisted, are understandable on a fundamental level. They challenge Batman physically, mentally, and morally, pushing him to his limits and forcing him to evolve as a character. Now let's compare this to Marvel's approach to villains. Take Jan-Rog from Captain Marvel, for example. Despite being played by the talented Jude Law, Jan-Rog is a forgettable character. His motivations are unclear, his character development is minimal, and he doesn't pose a significant challenge to our hero whatsoever. And for another example, there's Gore the God Butcher from Thor: Love and Thunder. Despite being played by one of our most talented working actors today, Christian Bale, Gore is barely present in the film. And he sucks. It feels like the filmmakers forgot that the villain is one of the most important parts of a superhero story. And it's as if Bale was edited out of the film, which is just not the right way to fix pacing. That's another thing all entirely. So what can Marvel learn from this? The answer is simple. Give us more complex villains. Villains who challenge our heroes on a philosophical level, who have clear motivations, and who feel like real, fleshed out characters. By doing so, Marvel could elevate their storytelling and create more engaging and memorable narratives. And it's not as if Marvel can't do this. They've given us Loki and Thanos, two villains who are complex, engaging, and memorable. Loki, with his mischievous charm and complex relationship with Thor, now becoming an anti-hero and having his own TV show, and Thanos, with his twisted ideology and immense power. They're just two examples of what Marvel can achieve when they put effort into their villains. It's so frustrating to see them miss the mark when they've shown us that they're capable of so much more. So let's shift gears and talk about the visual aspect of filmmaking. Christopher Nolan is known for his commitment to practical effects. In The Dark Knight Rises, he staged an actual plane hijacking and crash using minimal CGI. In The Dark Knight, he blew up a literal building. The result are sequences that feel real, tangible, and visceral. It isn't just spectacle for spectacle's sake. It is a testament to Nolan's commitment to cinematic realism and his respect for the intelligence of the audience. Now, let's compare this to Marvel's Ant-Man. The film relies heavily on CGI to bring its miniature world to life, and when I say heavily, I mean almost 100%. While the visual effects are impressive, they can't replicate the tangible and visceral impact of practical effects. I mean, I'm pretty sure it is just our main characters standing on green screens for about 90% of that movie. The world of Ant-Man feels less like a place you could actually visit, and more like a digital construct. I mean, they got this thing right in the 80s. Go back to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Look at those damn ants. I was so scared of this thing when I was a kid. That scared the shit out of me. There was a scorpion. I lived in Arizona, and there were scorpions that were small. I never wanted to see a scorpion that big, and that movie took that from me. That movie took away my scorpion innocence. The over-reliance on CGI can lead to what is known as the uncanny valley effect, where the audience is subconsciously aware that what they're seeing isn't real. It becomes off-putting and a little bit jarring. This is particularly noticeable when it comes to CGI characters like MODOK in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Oh my god. The overuse of CGI not only lowers the stakes, but it also psychologically signals to the audience that there are just no real consequences in the world that they're watching. Also, look at this guy. He's a nightmare. This guy scared me almost as bad as the scorpions. Moreover, the overworked nature of Marvel's VFX artists is beginning to show. The illusions are starting to crack, and it isn't just about the quality of the effects, it's about the effect this has on the audience's engagement and immersion in the story.
Does that look real?
In that particular shot, no, actually. It doesn't really, right? When you look close.
It need to be more blue.
But the issues with Marvel's approach to filmmaking aren't just visual. There's also the question of artistic integrity. Each of Nolan's films are distinct, self-contained works of art. They bear his unique stamp and reflect his personal vision. This is in very stark contrast to Marvel's collaborative approach, where individual films are often subsumed by the larger narrative of the MCU. While this approach has its advantages, it can sometimes stifle individual creativity. Take the first Ant-Man movie, for example. The film was initially set to be directed by Edgar Wright, who had unique vision for the project. Edgar Wright has such a creative, unique style, it would have been really cool to see. However, due to creative differences with Marvel, Wright left the project, and the final film bears little resemblance to his original vision. This raises an important question. Are directors the MCU facilitators of a company vision, or visionaries themselves? The interference of production companies and executives, whether for the sake of merchandise, connected plotlines, or both, can sometimes hinder the creative process and dilute the director's vision. In these regards, Marvel can learn a lot from Nolan. Prioritization of practical effects where possible. While superhero films will always require a significant amount of CGI, there is authenticity and tangibility to practical effects that CGI often struggle to replicate. In addition, Marvel should be mindful of the overuse of CG characters. The uncanny valley can disconnect the audience from the story, but by focusing on practical effects and minimizing the use of CG characters, Marvel could create a more grounded and engaging cinematic experience. This also ties into respecting the workload and expectations of their visual effects artists. Managing these aspects could ensure the quality of their VFX and maintain the illusion of their cinematic universe. In terms of storytelling, fostering individual directorial vision is crucial. Marvel's collaborative approach, while successful in creating an interconnected universe, can definitely stifle individual creativity. Allowing directors more creative control and respecting their unique vision could foster a diverse range of storytelling within their universe. In the early days of the MCU, films like Iron Man and Captain America: The First Avenger were largely self-contained stories. They introduced characters and set up their individual arcs, while also, sure, laying the groundwork for larger universe stuff. But as the MCU has grown and continues to introduce new characters, it seems like every film and every TV show is heavily reliant on the larger narrative. It's reached a point where you can't watch a Marvel TV show without having seen multiple films, and you can't watch a Marvel film without apparently having seen multiple TV shows. The focus has shifted from crafting individual, self-contained stories to ensuring the new entry fits in the larger puzzle of the MCU. This is where Christopher Nolan's The Prestige serves as a perfect example of a film that introduces unique worlds and characters, but tells a completely self-contained story. To be candid, I feel like I could have probably used any Christopher Nolan movie except for the Dark Knight trilogy here as an example, but I really like The Prestige. Christopher Nolan's films, like The Prestige, are renowned for their self-contained, unique narratives. The Prestige introduces us to a world of rival magicians in the late 19th century, a world steeped in obsession, deceit, and sacrifice. The film explores themes of duality, identity, and the cost of ambition, all wrapped up in a narrative that's as intricate as the magic tricks it portrays. It's a story that stands on its own, independent of any pre-existing narrative or universe, and this self-contained nature allows it to dive deeply into its themes and characters without, of course, worrying about having to set anything up for the future. And let's contrast this with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, specifically Thor Ragnarok. This film introduces new elements and characters such as the vibrant world of Sakaar and the enigmatic Grandmaster and Valkyrie. It's a cosmic adventure that expands the scope of the MCU, but it's also heavily tied into the larger narrative. The events of Ragnarok directly set up Avengers Infinity War, and the film is filled with references and callbacks to previous MCU entries.
That's how it feels!
The interconnectedness is part of the appeal of the MCU, of course, but it can also be a limitation. So, what can Marvel learn from this? They can strive to strike a balance between the interconnectedness of their universe and the individuality of their films. They can create films that introduce new elements and tell unique stories without heavily relying on the larger MCU narrative. It's not to suggest that Marvel should abandon its interconnected universe. That's one of the things that makes the MCU unique. But perhaps there's a balance to be struck. Marvel could benefit from returning to a mix of self-contained stories and a larger interconnected narrative. Films that can stand on their own while still being a part of the larger universe. Films that, like The Prestige, can captivate audiences with their own unique narratives and worlds. This would not only provide a more diverse range of stories, but it would probably also allow for more creative freedom and artistic expression. It's a challenging task, but if it's done right, it could breathe new life into the MCU and keep audiences coming back for more. Throughout the video, we've delved into a critical exploration of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, offering suggestions for how it could evolve and improve by taking cues from the work of Christopher Nolan. In each comparison, we've seen how Nolan's approach to filmmaking could maybe offer a fresh perspective to the MCU. It's not about copying Nolan's style, but about learning from it and incorporating some of these elements into the MCU's own unique formula. So, as we look to the future of the MCU, I can only hope that they maybe take some of these lessons to heart. Because if there's one thing that we've learned from Christopher Nolan above all, it's that the cinema is ready to show up.
I am Iron Man.